Gears of War is one of Microsoft's flagship titles on the Xbox. The gritty, blood-soaked gameplay, grisly protagonists, and the hordes of locusts took up many hours of my early time with the Xbox 360. I distinctly remember wanting an Xbox 360 for two reasons way back in 2006. Number one was the Halo 3 trailers. They were just iconic. And another iconic trailer dropped, which was the Mad World trailer for Gears of War. He was running through the streets, doing the Marcus Phoenix things, and it was just like nothing I'd ever seen before. Fast forward to now, we have 7 games in the series, the last being in 2020, which was Gears Tactics, which I also did a review on way back when. During the latter portion of 2023, I actually looked back at what Gears of War's release date was, and it was almost 18 years as of November this year. Damn, I'm getting old. So I decided I wanted to go back and see if this series was as good as I remember, starting with the original Gears of War. Would it be lost to the time period, or would it still feel good in 2024? That's what we're going to find out in today's video. For this specific review, I am doing it on the Ultimate Edition, which came out in 2015. I was having some issues with the emulation system on the Xbox Series X for Xbox 360 games, and hopefully I will fix that for later videos in the series. So with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Firstly, let's talk about the story because it's one of the most important. We're going to run through all of the different acts and talk to you about what actually happens in the original campaign of Gears of War. We start off the game in a dark, dank, and dirty prison cell, where we're introduced to our main protagonist, Marcus Phoenix. Thanks to Dominic and Jack, we're able to get it open, able to get some gear on, and then we're able to start the game. After a couple of brief encounters with some locusts, we are whisked away on a Raven to first meet Lieutenant Kim and the lovable Carmine. I sure hope this guy sticks around until the end of the campaign, because he's an awesome character. The general narrative of Gears of War is laid out right at the start of Act 1. Get the resonator to map the locust tunnels and deploy the light mass bomb, thanks to the data that we'll get from the resonator. Sounds easy enough. So off we go on our adventure, fighting our way through to the House of Sovereign to find Alpha Team. I can't help but notice that the very heavy gothic themes that the first game led with in terms of its environment and also in its story, I wouldn't have picked up on when I first played because I wasn't initially into Warhammer 40,000, but Warhammer 40k definitely gives me major vibes here, and it feels like it has some form of influence. Maybe that's just me projecting, but soldiers in big armor fighting a horde army, and the scenery just screams Imperium. So yeah, that's where I'm kind of landing on that overall theme. We fight our way through to the House of Sovereign. There's this really cool fountain fight that we have, and at this point, Carmine gets wasted.
Oh no! Anyway, last week...
Unfortunately, there is no time to waste, so we have to press on. Unfortunately, rest in peace, Carmine. And we make our way through to find the first member of Alpha Team and one of my personal favorite characters in the entire series, Augustus Cole, or more commonly known as the Cole Train, baby! Woo! He is a big personality and is exactly how I remember him 18 years later. We fight our way through a load of different encounters until we come across Alpha Squad that are pinned down from some locusts, and during this time we do get to use the spicy laser in the sky that is the Hammer of Dawn to bring ourselves our communications back online to talk to Control. To eventually meet up with Alpha Squad, we do have to go through all of these different encounters, and then we meet the fourth member that eventually will be part of Delta Squad, that is Baird. But from my count, there are too many people in this squad currently, and I'm sure nothing bad happens to anyone in this current squad of 5. So of course this leads to an ambush, a super slow-mo action man dive, and a brutal execution of Lieutenant Kim at the hands of General Ram. Point of note here, I picked up on something that I didn't when I initially played through. He actually spits blood in Ram's face as he goes out defiantly, and I kind of love it. And rounding out Act 1, we have a showdown, which is a quite unique one, with a Berserker, the big hulking mass of armor that is blind and very susceptible to sound. It has an interesting mechanic to deal with. We have to get them outside to kill them with the Hammer of Dawn. So how do you like your Berserker? Well done, medium rare. Either way, it's ultra crispy now, and that rounds out Act 1. Act 2 is where we get to see a whole lot about the squad. The constant banter between Cole and Baird, Marcus and Dom. It never feels forced and is written well. I even laughed a few times, especially when Baird makes fun of Cole for being a former thrashball player. Act 2 is all about getting hold of a vehicle to get to an emulsion factory. You fight your way through a bunch of different encounters until eventually you come across boomers. No, not those ones. These boomers. Eventually you'll come across a stranded camp, navigate through and start the journey towards getting the motor. The whole section is particularly interesting because it's nighttime and the Krill are the swarm of locusts that essentially will destroy everything in the dark, including your enemies, and you have to go from light source to light source here to be able to get to your key objective. Eventually you will arrive at the gas station with the vehicle that you need, but of course it needs fuel, and of course that means you have to defend it, which means you have a combat encounter that is thrown in right there. Oh, video games, you haven't changed from 2006 to now because it's all the same. After this, you'll get a really cool driving section where you have to balance using the UV light to fend off the Krill and also make your way back towards Delta Squad, culminating in a final wave battle to finish out the act. Act 3 doesn't really deviate in the story from what was said in Act 1. You are going into an emulsion factory where we are still using the resonator to get to the desired location, except there are now just problems getting in the way of our objective, including navigating a factory filled with lambent wretches that now explode on death, slippery rocks, and a massive 50-foot crawler, which gives us one of the most badass cutscenes that I just don't give a crap Marcus moments that I've seen in a video game character, and it still kind of hits hard even today.
Marcus!
After fighting your way through to the pump station, you'll go up against some Theron Guard, we deploy the resonator, and then we can all go home after a good day's work. Congrats, gentlemen, high fives, Gears of War's complete, is what I would have said if the resonator actually worked. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Which means we've got to go and find another way to deploy that bomb, but thanks to Bed conveniently grabbing a random tracking unit that has all the data that we need on. So convenient, right? But all jokes aside, this leads us nicely into Act 4. In my personal opinion, Act 4 is one of the weakest of all the acts in the game, as it essentially boils down to you getting to a mansion, getting the information inside of Jack to be able to, drop this light mass bomb. It does seem a little bit reductive, but that's how much the story progresses, and the real highlight here in this act is going back to the mansion that Phoenix grew up in. And surprisingly, it's still standing after the humans, nuked civilization, but the chapter finishes with us running away from a charging Brumac inside of an APC, and Act 4 for me just kind of felt like a filler act, especially on this replay. Even though we were steadily moving forward in all of the other acts in the game, it felt like it dipped a little bit. It kind of felt like we were going around in circles at the mansion. So yeah, this was kind of the low point. But here's where the key difference comes into play. In the original Gears of War release, you'd have just gone straight to the train station and had to fight off a load of enemies to get on the train and, deploy the light mass bomb and do Act 5. In the Ultimate Edition, there is additional chapters which includes a fight against a Brumac and dealing with a broken bridge. These chapters in Act 5 are kind of fun, and once you've done them, you will eventually get to the train station, jump onto the train, and do everything the same in Act 5. You'll fight the Berserker, which means you have to decouple the train cart, and then you have to rush through the Lambert-infested wretches of the cart that they're trying to stop the train. And then finally, we get to deploy the bomb, right? Right, guys? Let me stop you right there. General Ram is the final boss of the game. This fight can be a little bit frustrating at first until you figure out there is a torque bow in the previous cart, allowing you to combo shoot the Krills off with an explosive, and then hit a few clean headshots to beat the boss completely. The story wraps up with an all-important good guys jump to the helicopter at the last second moment, and we get this ending monologue from Hoffman. But that's not all. The female voice that we have heard periodically during the game and also in the menu trailer reveals herself, and it basically sets up the second game quite nicely. The story of Gears of War is really basic, but that's okay for many different reasons, because being the first in the series, it doesn't need to bog you down with a ton of character backstory or world building, as the entire game setting can be summarized in the menu cutscene to kind of start you off, which means you just get straight into the story and learn about things as you go. A lot of the story is fed through the earpiece in the game, which means it keeps it simple and allows the gameplay to shine a hell of a lot more. But I do think the true highlight of the game is Delta Squad. Each individual squad mate brings something different to the team. Marcus is the more natural-born leader and obviously is the main protagonist, but he works very well with Dom. Dom is like the glue that holds the entire team together, both being supportive and also giving each other shit at the same time. Coltrane is this explosive personality, just always hyped up like a 6-year-old on 4 Ribenas, but I enjoy him in the team. It's a different dynamic. And then one of my favorite characters actually is Baird. I relate to him the most because he's the sarcastic asshole, and being the British lad that I am also a sarcastic asshole at times, and I actually really enjoyed him because he's also the tech guy, so he is relied on regardless of whether or not you like his personality or not.
Oh, it's bullshit. Somebody here figured out the Coldplay thrash ball. Now it's all, oh, Coltrane, tell us all about that play again. And, hey, number 83, sign my shirt.
I actually really enjoyed him more on the replay, as I can remember from all those years ago. And small note too, the voice cast is just excellent here. All of the voices in the game, including I think it's Anya in the control earpiece, is also good as well. Just from start to finish, it's excellent. So we've talked about story, but let's talk about the most important aspect, and that is gameplay. The most surprising thing to me about replaying Gears of War was how good the gameplay actually was. I thought surely after so many years it wouldn't feel good. It would feel slow or sluggish, but it almost felt exactly the same as Gears 5 that I played a few years ago. Popping between covers can help you speed up your movement, but the core essence of the gameplay is use cover, find angles against your enemies, and execute. What was created in 2006 is still in the DNA of Gears to this day. With a few iterations as the series has gone on, it's improved, but it's unique to Gears, which is mind-boggling for me to see. They nail it, and they nailed it on their first go-ahead. The caveat is that you're not always using cover. When you are not, you are quite slow considering you're wearing full cog armor, but after all, I think it's distinctly memorable. And I still remember how many hours I put into Gears of War 1 and Gears of War 2, and it was like riding a bike. There are a lot of cover shooters out there that were spawned from Gears of War, but they don't do it like Gears does. It's a massive testament to the team that made it at the time. Combat is also shaken up by the variety of weapons that you have, which in this game was quite a small selection in comparison to what we have now, but all of them will equally turn you or your enemies into a nice pasta sauce on the floor after using. The regular weapons such as the Hammerburst and the iconic Lancer with the trusty chainsaw will always be a staple. The Lancer is such an amazing gun, and it's been in the series all the way through, and I think that is the same as like the Magnum that is in Halo, and that's why I will always remember the Lancer as such an iconic gun. There is also 2 pistols in the game, the Snub and the Boltok Magnum, and the bane or the champion of every Gears player's lives, the Nasher shotgun. When I say this thing still feels amazing and incredible to use, I am not exaggerating. Things turn into a fine paste or into chunks, and I absolutely love using this, and it's still used to this day alongside the Lancer. That combo is iconic for me. The specialty weapons in the game usually come from actually killing enemies, such as the boom shot, which is pretty simple. Fire explosive launcher, turn enemies into red bits. All good. The long shot sniper rifle, which hazard a guess what this sniper rifle is for, and one of the more unique weapons, which is the torque bow, which is essentially an explosive arrow launcher that turns your enemies into mush. We do also have the Hammer of Dawn, which I previously mentioned. This time it has infinite ammo in the first game, and you can only use it in certain locations, but it's still devastating to both your enemies and even yourself. You can kill yourself if you fire it too close. I'm actually excited to use the Hammer of Dawn again in the later games to see how much it differs from its initial showing. Every single weapon in this game feels fantastic, and the sound design for both the enemies being destroyed, you being destroyed, hitting a headshots, which to me, whoever made this sound for the headshots in the Gears of War games has etched it into my mind like an M1 Garand reload. Just listen to this.
Oh yeah!
The sound is just so satisfying, and even the sound of the Lancer shredding through enemies and the chainsaw shredding through enemies. There's just a lot of things to like about the sound design. Although it is horrendously balanced in the Ultimate Edition, there was times where there was like a Vine Boom-esque bass boosted thing with the Brumac when it was walking towards the specific section. I'll show it off here, and I've also turned the volume down so eardrums don't absolutely bleed. These two areas, the sound design and the gameplay, were my two biggest worries about it being slow and sluggish, and it wasn't at all. The sounds were nice and crisp, apart from a couple of the audio issues on the Ultimate Edition, and the gameplay I had no problems with whatsoever. Every weapon felt great, every weapon sounded great, and every weapon was just fun to use. I also realized that every act has a fantastic approach to level design. I briefly mentioned that it has influences of Warhammer in this game, but every single environment feels huge and spacious, even if the play space is rather small. They captured the scale in some sections, but from what I can count, at least 3 out of the 5 acts had one like really cool, unique set piece, if not 2 in some acts. Act 1 had the Berserker fight, which has you lure an enemy outside to be able to progress rather than just pumping a bunch of damage into it. It has a specific mechanic that you need to follow. Act 2 has one of my favorite sections, which is the Krill section. There's bits where you have to shine a light down to guide your teammate. There's propane tanks everywhere, so you have to be able to think and move, otherwise you're going to be turned into locust food. Plus, there is a really cool driving section that is a complete flip on what we've been doing already, which is a bonus. Act 3 has a train cart section, which is locked in, but when you're playing in co-op, you get 2 different perspectives. Plus, you have a boss fight with a crawler, and you have to complete the boss in a certain way, which is luring an enemy towards you to blow off some holding like structures, and that's something that's a bit different. Act 4, although you are in one area, you defend different parts of the mansion, which makes it into a closer area of engagement, amplifying the cover system, and also kind of makes it a little bit more claustrophobic, which is where the shotgun shines, and also the chainsaw shines as well. Act 5 has the entire ending train section, which combines the Berserker encounter, the Lambert Wretches, and then obviously the final encounter in the boss. But they went ahead and added a whole Brumac boss fight in the Ultimate Edition in that chapter, which I mentioned earlier, and that was a pretty cool thing to do as well. And surprisingly as well, the game was a lot harder than I expected going back. Even though I was playing on the normal difficulty, this thing, caught me out a couple of times, which was actually quite surprising. Each act in the game has something memorable which sets it apart from the other ones. Even the combat areas They are designed with the cover-to-cover shooting in mind. They're just not haphazardly placed. The environment design and the level design is smashed together to be absolutely flawless. And each area feels nice to play in. The flow of the area and the ability to be able to get onto an enemy is nice. Combat flow and environment flow, gameplay flow is still something that some games struggle with to this day. So to see it being done in 2006 is just amazing. I can't believe it's held up this long. Something to note about this game as well, there is an incredible amount of cheese in this game. For example, there's a point where you are walking in Act 3 and you just slip on a banana peel, which is quite hilarious. Oh, here we go. That's such a laughable slip. There's also like the slow-mo action dives, like the Hollywood-esque, I'm gonna jump from this helicopter, you can save me, and like the slow-mo looks to camera. They were just really fun moments, and I think it just added that little bit extra to the overall experience in the game. And I think they added even more of those in the later games as well, so I can't wait to go and see more of them. The Gears of War franchise remains one of my favorite game series to this day, and going back to Gears of War, I was very skeptical, but it was and still is a fantastic experience. I went into the game replaying it and expecting to find some faults and potentially pick apart some things in comparison to other games in the current day, and I found one. The only issue is that the game is rather short. It clocks in at around about 6 hours at a steady pace, if not quicker when you're in co-op, and a little bit longer on higher difficulties. I distinctly remember playing this on Insane when I was a lot younger, and it took a hell of a lot longer time because, you know, you die a lot easier on there. But this isn't necessarily a bad thing, because with longer games becoming the standard now, having a game locked in for a good quality experience for around about 6 to 8 hours is something that I personally enjoy. And with everything trying to take away your time right now, that, you know, small window that you could play in a game, I mean, dating back to 2006, is still quite short, and I think that is actually really good. I think Gears of War does this to a T, and if you think about it, about the context of when this actually launched, it was a new IP, utilizing the 360 graphical fidelity at the time, solid level design, an easy story to follow with awesome combat. Does this game really hold up in the modern day? Well, for me, hell yeah, it does. I'm yet to look at Gears 2 and also Gears 3, but there are so many people asking for a Marcus Phoenix trilogy, and I am welcome in that as well. I thought I'd be swept up in this wave of nostalgia, like replaying an old game and having those rose-tinted glasses, but I generally enjoyed everything I played here, and it brought back so many memories and got me excited to play the rest of the series, including Gears of War Judgment, which a lot of people don't really like, and my memory's a bit sketchy on that one. Hopefully this answers the question of whether it was as good as I remember. Was it as good as you remember? If so, leave it down in the comments section. It's my first time making one of these, and I want to see if people enjoyed this, and I want to make more. I'm wanting to do the entire Gears franchise and many other franchises as revisits, alongside some other new reviews. So if you want to stick around for that, make sure you leave a like on the video, subscribe so you know when the newest video is coming out onto your subscription feeds, and as always, this has been It's Jimbo, and I'll see you guys next time.